Hello, everyone. I'm Ashley Sergiatis, and I'm joined by my colleagues Travis Clayman, Phil Smith, and Jennifer Young. We are all co-leaders of our Open and Affordable Course Materials initiatives at East Tennessee State University, which supports the use of free or low-cost materials in ETSU classes. We are here to talk about two of our main open and affordable initiatives, our awards program and our e-textbook reserves. So in this presentation, we will be providing an overview of our awards program and e-textbook reserves, followed by a detailed compare and contrast of these two initiatives. We hope that our conclusions from the compare and contrast can hopefully help some of you with making decisions on what initiatives to implement at your own institutions. So I'm going to start by, as I mentioned, providing a brief overview of these initiatives. Phil Smith from our Center for Teaching Excellence and myself from our library, we both co-manage our awards program. And our awards program is based on stipends. So we distribute stipends to faculty who are adopting, adapting, or creating open and affordable materials for their courses. And stipends currently range from about $500 to $2,000, although they've sometimes been a bit bigger in the past. And for faculty who are adapting or creating open educational resources, I provide publishing support, which includes publishing those OERs in our institutional repository. We also provide one-on-one support related to everything open and affordable, as well as organized meetings for a faculty learning community, which provides a nice peer support for our faculty. Then with our e-textbook reserves, we have Travis Clayman, Jennifer Young, and myself from the library. We all organize our e-textbook reserves. Each semester, we review a spreadsheet that's provided by our bookstore, and we identify the required textbooks that we can either purchase or subscribe to. And faculty are also able to ask us if their textbooks are available for purchase through the library with our suggest a purchase form. Our communication with the faculty is primarily near the beginning of the semester to let them know that their textbooks are available, but then we also provide that ongoing technical support throughout the semester. Although, the awards program and e-textbook reserves are very much separate initiatives, they do occasionally cross over. So our awards program was initially intended for faculty implementing open educational resources only in their classes. But after we heard from the faculty, we decided to expand it to all affordable materials. And that includes library resources. So when I've looked back at our awards program, about 10% of the courses have used library resources as their primary readings. And they've even used, and then more have, of course, used library resources as supplementary materials. We also host workshops that promote open and affordable materials, as well as our initiatives. For some of these workshops, we actually provide faculty a list of 3 open textbooks for each of their courses. And if we can't find 3 open textbooks, then we supplement those lists with library e-textbooks. So when I've looked back at our workshops, about 70% of our courses needed to be supplemented with library resources. So we could not find 3 open textbooks for those courses. And these are just 2 examples of how our initiatives work together. So now that I've gone over the basics of the initiatives, we're going to be providing direct compare and contrast of the initiatives. And as you can tell by my descriptions, previously, the awards program has a lot more faculty involvement than the e-textbook reserves. So with the awards program, it requires faculty, to respond to emails, but also to meet as part of our faculty learning communities, while the e-textbook reserves were primarily emailing with the faculty. In addition, what we've discussed with the faculty in the awards program, it requires a lot more in-depth discussion around all sorts of open and affordable topics like searching, copyright, publishing, accessibility, and pedagogy. Meanwhile, when we talk with faculty regarding the e-textbook reserves, it's much more focused around getting the textbook into their learning management system and providing that technical support. And then lastly, the faculty also invest more time when they participate in the awards program because it requires them to implement new course content. While the eTextbook reserves, that just requires faculty to communicate to their students that their current textbook is now available through the library. And this also makes our support through the library less time intensive with the eTextbook reserves, especially since the needs of each instructor with the awards program is slightly different, and the needs of the instructors through the eTextbook reserves are essentially the same. So now I'm going to pass it along to Jennifer Young to talk more about how the awards program and eTextbook reserves compare and contrast.
Yeah, as Ashley mentioned, since the eTextbook Reserve program is less time intensive, we've been able to impact a larger number of courses, students, and faculty in a shorter time frame. In total, we've been able to offer an OER or library provided eTextbook for 266 courses at ETSU, 55 of those as part of the awards program, and 211 as part of the eTextbook Reserve program. In total, over 9,000 students have benefited from the combination of these two programs. Next slide, please. One trend we noticed early in adopting these programs is how well they complement each other to provide open and affordable options to both undergraduate and graduate level courses. As you can see from the slide, the awards program primarily benefits students in lower level undergraduate courses. This is likely due to the more prominent availability of OERs for these introductory level courses. The availability of OERs for the upper level and graduate level courses is not as robust at this time. So that's where the eTextbook Reserve program has been able to provide the most impact. So most of the courses as part of that program that have implemented the library licensed electronic textbooks have been upper level undergraduate courses, and nearly half of all courses as part of this program were at the graduate level. Next slide, please. When looking at the subject areas served, we did not notice a significant difference between the two programs. So as you can see, the subject areas we worked with the most for the awards program were the social and behavioral sciences, arts and humanities, and education. Similarly, the eTextbook program, the top supported subject areas were arts and humanities, medicine and health sciences, and education. Next slide, please. So regarding the expenses, the eTextbook program did yield a higher return on investment. The primary cost associated with the awards program is the faculty stipend awarded to faculty for either adopting, customizing, or creating an open access material. These stipends are typically between $500 to $2,000. And since 2019, we have invested just over $134,000 in the awards program, resulting in close to $500,000 in savings. I do want to point out that the savings listed here are just for the first semester of implementation. So for the eTextbook Reserve program, the primary cost is the purchase of the institutionally licensed ebooks. We always prioritize unlimited use titles when available, but we do have several nonlinear 3-user and even a few 1-user titles in our collection. In the 2 years that we have been working with this program, we have invested just over $20,000 in eTextbooks. You'll notice that the savings on the eTextbook side have a range. This is due to us wanting to present both the savings and return on investment for titles purchased with the $20,000 and those that we've included in our eReserve program that were part of our subscription packages. So the titles we purchased, we saw a potential savings of close to $160,000, which resulted in a 780% return on investment. When you include the subscription titles, the student savings increases to over $326,000. Next slide, please. To assist with the evaluation of both programs, we conducted a faculty and student survey. This data that's going to be presented on the following slides will cover survey data from our fall 2021 survey. For each survey, we received 19 faculty responses, and for the student surveys, we received over 800 responses, 530 regarding the awards program, and 289 responses regarding the e-textbook reserves. Next slide, please. So when we ask the students how often they use the materials for the courses, you'll see that in the daily or 2 to 3 times a week category, students that were part of the awards program marked that they were more likely to use it more often. This could potentially be to the fact that the OERs were more customized for the course and they're being more frequently referenced by the faculty, so students see them being more closely related to the assignments and learning outcomes. And I'm going to hand it over now to Phil Smith to talk about the rest of the survey data.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pedagogical and impact of these two different programs. So a little bit more on not just the resources they used, but how it affected the class, how it maybe transformed the class for the better. And so on this slide, you can see we've said more pedagogical impact for the awards program than the e-textbooks reserve. And I think that makes sense given what we've presented so far in terms of how we reach out to the faculty, what we expect of the faculty. Basically, we do more work, have more interaction with the faculty in the awards program with our faculty learning communities and some of the other trainings and support that we do, whereas the textbook reserve is a lot of times just kind of plugging in the resources. And so this slide actually comes from what the student survey. And so the question, did the materials help you study more effectively? They're pretty similar, but there is a little bit more evidence that the programs, the classes that went through, that did the awards program, that were using the OER, that we interacted with more, that maybe helped create an environment in the class where the students could study better and then the materials were more effectively tailored to the class. Next slide, please. Some other points regarding the pedagogical impact. A lot of times in the awards program, you know, but kind of by the nature of it, we were asking them to you know, change the materials from a costly textbook to an OER, and so it did, you know, involve changing the actual textbooks. Whereas with reserves, sometimes they were able to just, you know, keep using the same textbook, only give the students free access to it. So, you know, it saved them the money, but it's not really changing the class in any way. And so that guaranteed electronic availability for students was there for both of them. And that last point, I think, speaks to this point I'm trying to make, that almost all faculty indicated change to the course. So kind of have this, the idea is kind of, you know, when you're changing the materials, using more open materials, that also leads you to think about the learning activities, the assessments, and the outcomes. Next slide, please. Some more positive changes. I think we see positive changes in from both of these programs, maybe a little bit more in the awards program, since the instructors were very involved with selecting the OERs that they wanted to use. I think they were, in general, would refer to them more in class. They were a bit more integrated into class discussions and the outcomes, and would lead to some new lectures and learning activities. But on the e-textbook side, you can see there's also, you know, they were able to refer to the text in class more types of materials can be used with the e-textbooks as well, sometimes have additional content that the print version wouldn't have. And our surveys, you know, reported some difficulties with both OERs and the awards program, that e-textbook reserves a little bit with kind of some tech problems and using different ancillary software like Perusal, which is an online annotation thing. So some reported that they weren't able to do those kinds of things. But I think overall, you could see a positive pedagogical impact for both of those. Next slide, please. And just a point on representation, so diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of what we look at with our OERs, with our awards program and e-textbooks reserve. So we had a couple survey questions about this as well. And these, it really shakes out about the same in terms of the data that we were able to gather. And a little bit of what's happening behind this is that basically some subjects, the diversity, seeing diverse identities being represented is a bit more part of the class than others. So for example, we worked with a lot of composition classes, kind of first year writing classes, where the materials they would be using would be short articles and videos, and they were able to, represent diversity that way. Whereas some of the classes we work with were like chemistry and science classes, and we get a lot of comments like, well, diversity doesn't really have a lot to do with math, which actually I think is not quite true, but that's where it stands with what we've done so far. So I think now I pass it over to Travis to talk about the next part.
Yes, thank you, Phil. So as part of the survey, we asked students if they had incurred any additional costs from either of these initiatives. We found for the awards program overall that there was a lower additional costs. 14.2% of students indicated they spent money purchasing course materials. An example of that was a chemistry course that adopted a OpenStax textbook. And this textbook was available for purchase in a print edition at the bookstore. 20.7% of students indicated they spent money printing these materials. So it's either from home, library, or another facility. And out of those students who spent money, a little bit over 2/3 indicated they had spent about $40 or less. As far as the e-textbook reserves, we saw higher additional costs. Roughly 1/3 of students spent money buying their own copy. These textbooks were available for purchase at the bookstore. Only a small percentage, 3.6%, indicated that they printed part or all of their e-textbook using the e-textbook platform. And roughly about half of those who spent money actually indicated they spent a little more. So we're looking in somewhere between $51 and $100. Next slide. We also asked about the ease of use. So we saw a similarity here that both initiatives, 85 to 90% of students reported using open and affordable materials as easy. We did give them an ability to tell us otherwise. So there was a few reasons there. For both programs, students felt like they had a little bit of difficulty either navigating the D2L platform or the open and affordable materials themselves. As far as the awards program, some indicated issues with their internet or loading the content. And they also felt like it may have been a little bit harder finding or searching through the open and affordable materials. As far as the textbook reserves, there was just a handful of textbooks that we purchased electronically that varied just slightly from the edition that was being sold at the bookstore. So we had a little bit of issues where the page numbers may have been different, the content, and there was also some indication that some of the students just preferred having a paper or print textbook. Next slide. Another important thing that we wanted to know was accessibility. Did these students have any accessibility issues getting their content? We were happy to find out that less than 5% from either initiative had accessibility issues. We saw in the awards program, the reasons given, some people had issues with being able to read the text, color contrast, the lack of highlighting or annotating content. There was also some situations where the picture was covering the text, formatting issues, and just not being able to copy the content. As far as the e-textbook reserves, primarily those textbooks were either hosted on the EBSCO or ProQuest platform. So those platforms have a core set of accessibility tools and features. However, we still got a few comments about the read the text tools and then the color contrast on the textbooks. Both indicated at sometimes they had issues with the internet loading or having a glitch, either with signing into the material or just trying to access it in general. Next slide. As far as the service, almost 90% of students felt like this was a great and valuable service, and all of them, 90% indicated that they supported using their fees to continue these initiatives. As far as the faculty, it was all 100%. They felt like we should support the initiative and we should continue the program. Next slide. So in conclusion, we felt like both services were a success and they complemented one another. Just to give a recap with the e-textbook reserves, it required less funds and less time investment. There was a high financial return on these textbooks, and there was a less effect on the pedagogy. And as far as the awards program, they did require more funds and more time to implement. There was a lower financial return, but we felt like there was more effect on the pedagogy. And now I'll give it back to Ashley for her to close out the presentation.
Thanks, Travis. So while we were happy with the success of our initiatives, there are definitely a few improvements that we hope to make for the future. The first is we had trouble finding ways to track the overall percentage of courses using open and affordable materials as their required readings. So our bookstore data is the only place that this sort of data exists, but it's not always accurate. Similarly, we've had trouble tracking if faculty involved with the awards program and e-textbooks reserves are continuing to use those open and affordable materials. The second need that we hope to address is we know that some faculty definitely have been using open and affordable materials outside of our initiatives, and we just love to recognize them somehow, whether it's through electronic badges or another type of award or just any other sort of method. And of course, we also need a better way to track who those faculty are that are already using open and affordable materials outside of our initiatives. Third, and Jennifer touched on this, is we do need to promote our library e-text. We're trying to figure out how to promote our library e-textbook subscriptions because as probably many of you have experienced, ebooks are disappearing from subscriptions, and it's made it unreliable and it has caused issues in our classes. So we're still working out those details on how we want to incorporate library e-textbook subscriptions into our initiatives. And then lastly, we've learned that the subject area of the course shapes the perception of the diversity of the content within open and affordable materials. So we're just trying to figure out a way to help faculty incorporate more diverse content in those areas that have that less obvious connection to diversity. So that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening, and we are now available to answer any of your questions.